Hi guys, welcome to another video. So today I wanted to talk about this idea of transcending problems rather than trying to solve them, especially trying to forcefully solve them in a very specific way. So what does it mean to transcend a problem? Well, I guess we all know what it means to solve a problem. We live in this kind of world where ingenuity and problem solving are very, very highly valued. I should know because I sort of identify as a problem solver. That's as an engineer, that's kind of my job, and I take pride in it somehow that, you know, it's this great thing. So we understand what solving a problem is, but what about, is there another way? Is there a way that we can simply transcend problems? Are our problems actually problems, or are they just something we've created in our minds, or something that's been marketed to us or conditioned into us so that we believe it's a problem? And then if we can simply see that clearly, we can transcend the problem, like go beyond it, rather than having to waste our time or our effort or our lives basically to try and solve it forcefully. So what's an example of this kind of thing? Well, I guess there's a lot of companies around these days that aim to solve problems, and it's pretty exciting and pretty cool to be involved with this kind of thing. There's companies doing all sorts of interesting stuff, and a lot of people working very hard to solve certain problems using technology. But then I don't want to single out any particular thing though, but if you look at a lot of these companies' approaches, they do tend to be about kind of creating a problem. If you think about marketing, it is about kind of getting ideas into people's heads and kind of convincing people that they have a problem and here is the solution. You know, this specific particular thing is going to solve this problem. And not only that, a lot of these companies, especially if they're funded by venture capitalists who have certain expectations, they can sometimes focus a lot on creating dependencies. So instead of like solving someone's problem once and for all, they tend to focus on, hey, why don't we create a thing which the person has to keep buying and buying and buying, and they're dependent on it, and sure, it makes their problem go away, but only if they keep paying us money. So it's not about solving the problem once and for all, because if they did that, then they wouldn't buy the product anymore, they'd just be done with it. It's about creating a dependency. So a lot of companies operate like that. Again, I'm not trying to single anyone out. I've been involved with companies and it's fine, but I'm just saying that there are other ways we can approach problems rather than simply trying to solve them, and then we have to, you know, whatever, if it's something that we need to buy or do to solve that problem or to keep it solved, then we have to keep buying it and doing that. So it's not always the wisest way to deal with problems. Whereas if we transcend a problem, if we go through it, if we pass through it, then often it dissolves on its own. We see that, oh, actually this isn't a problem. This was just something in my own mind that was conditioned into me through culture, through marketing, through just observing the people around me. My parents just passed all these desires down to me, and now I see problems everywhere which I need to solve, when actually if I just got rid of that conditioning or diminished it, these problems would just vanish completely and forever. So one thing like this is, I guess, with me, when I moved into a new place, sometimes I would notice kind of noises and sounds around the place, and it would bother me somehow. And I didn't really understand why it bothered me. And I was thinking, well, maybe the solution is I need to move out to a new place, or I need to, like, you know, sort this person out or whatever, right? Figure out some sort of solution to this thing, and those can be done, and I did pursue some solutions. But ultimately, how I dealt with this problem of noise in my place was I actually sort of understood what noise was and what the real agitation in my mind was. So it wasn't really what I expected. It was like there was kind of judgments or thoughts about why this noise is worse than other noises, because it seemed like there was other noises which didn't bother me. Why do these particular noises bother me? I had certain judgments about them. It's people doing this thing, drunk people doing that, or whatever. And that was actually my judgment about the noise was actually what was bothering me. And I was able to transcend this problem of noise, rowdy people outside, by actually seeing inside myself that agitation, what was really causing it, which was my judgment about those people, and that they shouldn't be doing this, they're this kind of people or that kind of people. And then I kind of managed to see through all that. It's like, hey, these guys are just like me. They're just trying to enjoy. They're just trying to find peace, but they're choosing to do it a certain way, and that's okay, right? These people, they may have had hard times in their past, or even their ancestors. Some of these people were the indigenous people of this country that I live in New Zealand, and to their ancestors there would have been bad things that happened, and and colonists sort of came into this country. I don't want to get too political here, but the truth is, certain bad karma happened to them, and I am living on land that that was part of their ancestors, and certain bad karma may have happened to them. And hey, I'm all actually part of this whole system. Everything that's happened, I'm part of that. So I can't separate myself from these people making this noise. So when I sort of understood all this, where it was all coming from, somehow the problem of noise vanished. I transcended it. It was no longer a problem, and because I saw the real source of the problem. It wasn't me having to go out there and do something. It was actually entirely in my head. My own judgments were what were keeping me awake. And now I have just no problem with any of this kind of thing. It's actually solved because I have transcended the problem. I didn't try to solve it through something or moving away. If I moved to another house which was quieter, I haven't actually solved the problem. The problem is still there in my head, waiting to jump out and annoy me at any moment. So that's what I mean by, that's a great example of transcending a problem rather than trying to solve it through force or running away or moving away or whatever. So the more you can kind of do this in your life, the more that problems, you get to reverse all your conditioning that's creating these problems out of thin air. The more problems we solve, the more that they seem to pop out. That's because we're not dealing with enough of them through transcending the problem instead of just solving it, because you can just go along solving, get more and more dependencies and things that carry all this big thing around with you, all your stuff around with you to keep you happy and safe and solve all your problems. But it's really just not really solving anything, because these problems are still there. They're still in your head, and you've just got a bunch of stuff that's compensating for it. So anyway, that's hopefully helped you understand what I'm getting at here, and kind of the benefits of, I still consider myself an engineer and a problem solver. That's what I do for work, and it's cool. I don't mind getting involved with companies that do all this stuff. But hey, I'm just saying there's a balance to be struck with looking at problems a different way, and not in this kind of regular kind of consumerist kind of way where we're looking to just solve our problems with a hammer. Everything is a nail and we hit it with a hammer. Whereas there could be other tools such as transcending, such as quieting your mind, finding out the root cause of problems in your own head. So a lot of this also has a strong scientific basis around neuroplasticity. Just wanted to put that in there. Not that we need science to tell us that something is real or good or worth doing. If something feels worth doing and it's really working for you, then just do it. You don't need scientific evidence. A lot of scientific evidence is just kind of twisted anyway by some company who wants to justify selling their product. So yeah, but just putting that out there, neuroplasticity is a real mechanism of the mind. We can change it and shift it, and often it's really overlooked. We're trying to always change the outside world to solve our problems, when actually if we just look inside, we can solve them once and for all in a more effective way. And so, yeah, I mean, there's probably lots of other little examples once you start looking and seeing a bit more clearly. One of them I think I was thinking about recently was this whole the problem of meat. So consuming meat is bad for the environment or whatever. Well, generally I just think it's kind of bad karma. It's just a annoying attachment. So you can eat it sometimes, you can don't eat it, but just having to buy it all the time, prepare it, it's messy, it's just not a very convenient thing to eat, to be honest. But that's why I don't really eat meat. I'll occasionally eat it if someone does a good job cooking it, but honestly, it's not worth it to cook it at home. I've found much better and faster ways of preparing food than messy pieces of flesh. But there's a lot of companies out there who try to solve the problem of meat by creating fake meat, which I thought was very interesting, because I don't eat. One of the main reasons I don't eat meat is because it's inconvenient. You have to refrigerate it, you have to keep buying it, it's messy. And these companies are trying to emulate meat so accurately, including the downsides of it, like the messiness, the use by date, the packaging, emulate it right down to all those disadvantages of meat as well, which is really bizarre, right? When you think about it, they're trying to make fake meat with all the downsides of meat, in terms of the actual preparing and cooking it. So that's probably another kind of funny example of trying to solve a problem forcefully, rather than, hey, why don't we rethink it? And as a consumer as well, do you really want to buy fake meat, which is as annoying to cook as real meat, or just learn to cook other types of meats, alternatives, proteins, which are often very easy, much easier. We're just not really used to it in the West, cooking these, making them taste good. But there are other countries that do a really good job of it, countries that have solved the problem of meat by transcending it, by just making the desire for meat go away. It's ingrained in their culture, especially in places like India, where it's just not, meat is just not seen as a big deal. Nobody really cares. So yeah, that's another and kind of interesting example of solving the problem of meat, where it's something that's already been solved thousands of years ago by just letting go of our desire for it in the first place, through the amazing process of neuroplasticity and meditation. So hopefully that's given you some insight into my approach of transcending problems instead of just solving them. And even though we use a combination of both, I still consider myself a problem solver and engineer. But I've got a newfound kind of appreciation for simply being able to shift our own minds and understand that our minds are actually already shifted by the forces outside of us, marketing, culture, the people we see around us, our family. And are we happy with the way that all those things have conditioned us? Are we okay with that? Why shouldn't we try to recondition or uncondition our own minds, instead of just being happy with what was randomly inserted in there by all this stuff, and increasingly internet algorithms sort of getting in there as well, polarizing us. We think that our political opinions, for example, are our own, and we see all sorts of weird problems now. Oh, this guy's thinking this thing and saying that, and all this noise we see in the media. Suddenly we have these problems in our head which have just come out of thin air. And where did they come from? Well, that is just conditioning again. We believe these opinions are our own, but they're not. They've just been cleverly inserted in there by algorithms and marketing on the internet. It's sort of polarized us in certain directions, created bubbles. All of our search results are not real search results anymore. They're actually recommendations based on our political bubble. And this further kind of conditions us or polarizes us in a certain direction, and it agitates the whole mind. And then they can create more stories to agitate you further, and then next minute you're arguing with people about all sorts of political stuff, which probably doesn't really even matter that much. And yeah, suddenly you're just living this distracted, crazy world, noisy world. That is a problem to me. And how do we solve that? Well, I think that is something that you really just have to transcend. There is no other technological solution to that. You have to learn to quieten your own mind to be free from all this distraction. And then we can still use technological tools like smartphones and computers, but in a very wise way where we don't get fooled or sucked in and then completely forget that we've been fooled and sucked in and pretend that these opinions and things are our own. And, it goes around and around and around. We're like dogs chasing our own tails. So that was my kind of spiel about transcending problems rather than trying to forcefully solve them, and how we can use a balance of both of these things to bring us to a better level of peace in our lives, better contentment. And so I hope you work on your insight, work on your meditation, coming to a quieter state, an undistracted state, so that we can start to see things a bit more clearly without this fog of opinions and conditioning. And then as we see things more clearly, we start to see that, okay, some of these problems just fall away on their own. Suddenly you've just got a few less problems, and then you can kind of deal with the other ones in wiser ways. You're kind of less confused, you're rushing around less, and gradually, as you make meditation, spiritual path, your daily practice, generating insights, coming naturally from within you, from your inner wisdom, rather than having to read it or understand it through words. And I hope that you find greater and greater peace and fewer problems. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.